My friends, the greatest secret I have ever discovered about the human experience is this. The mind is a fertile field far more powerful than most realize. It does not argue, it does not question, it does not judge, and it does not compare one seed with another. It simply receives the seeds you plant within it, whether they be noble or ignoble, and then, in time, returns the harvest according to your planting. The soil of your consciousness is utterly impartial. It cannot tell the difference between a weed and a rose, a lie and a truth, a fear and a faith. It simply produces after its kind, quietly and inevitably, as surely as the seasons turn. This is why I say to you tonight with deep earnestness that your mind will believe whatever you repeat for it, no matter how small, how impossible, or how magnificent the thought may appear to your rational senses. The only question is, what are you sowing? For just as surely as a gardener reaps the fruit of his hands, you will live among the harvest of your repeated inner speech. You hear me speak about the law of assumption. Understand it not as a clever phrase, but as a living principle. Repetition is the water that nourishes assumption and causes it to grow roots in the unseen. You cannot plant a seed once and expect a full garden any more than you can speak a single word of faith and demand a lifetime of blessings. You must tend to it, return to it, rehearse it in your inner speech until it becomes so familiar, so natural to you that it feels like a long-worn garment. Your inner dialogue is not a trivial pastime, it is the sacred workshop of your future. Every time you repeat a thought, you engrave it a little deeper into the soft clay of your subconscious, and soon it hardens into your automatic self-concept. The subconscious mind, being impersonal and non-analytical, accepts it as fact and begins, without your conscious awareness, to organize your outer world to reflect it, summoning people, opportunities, and even seeming coincidences to match the tone of what you've rehearsed. People often ask me, Neville, how do I convince my mind to believe in something it has never seen, touched, or tasted? And my answer is always the same, and will forever be the same, through repetition with feeling. A single thought spoken once is like a match struck in a gale. It flickers, flares, and dies before it can warm the room. But a thought repeated with feeling again and again is like a fire built brick by brick, log by log. It becomes self-sustaining, and soon it gives off a heat of its own. Your mind believes not because something is objectively true by the world's standards, but because you have impressed upon your inner self as though it were true. Each repetition is like pressing a seal into wax. Eventually the image is indelibly fixed. This is why the mystics speak of dwelling in the end and living from the wish fulfilled. It is not daydreaming, it is training consciousness until it becomes reality. Let me be clear. The outer world does not cause your inner beliefs. Rather, your inner beliefs outpicture as the outer world, just as an invisible mold shapes the molten metal poured into it. The moment you begin to repeat an idea with conviction, your mind begins to rearrange itself, its memories, its associations, its expectations, to accommodate that idea. This is why, for example, people who constantly tell themselves they are unlucky continue to meet unfortunate circumstances, while those who repeatedly affirm their favor seem to walk under a different sky. Life simply mirrors what you have accepted as real within, and it does so with mathematical precision, whether you recognize it or not. Change the pattern of repetition, and you change the pattern of life. Do not wait for evidence to give you permission to believe. Belief itself, repeated with feeling, is the evidence in seed form. The harvest always looks different from the seed, but it always contains the essence of it. You may think your casual self-talk is harmless, but it is in fact the quiet architect of your destiny. The subconscious does not know humor, it does not understand sarcasm, it cannot tell when you are just saying something for effect. It simply takes your repeated words and feelings as a command. like a loyal servant that never questions the master's order. If you call yourself poor, sick, unloved, or unlucky, even in jest, you are planting weeds in your garden. Repetition gives them roots, and roots once deep bear fruit whether you like it or not. This is why wise men and women guard not only their speech to others, but their inner speech to themselves. The silent monologue you rehearse in your mind every morning as you rise and every night as you drift to sleep is shaping tomorrow's circumstances. If you desire a life of beauty, begin by planting beautiful phrases and images within, and water them with persistent feeling. Some will say, "But Neville, I tried affirmations for a week and nothing happened. Surely this means it does not work." My dear friends, can a farmer plant seeds on Monday and demand a harvest on Friday without regard to season, soil, and nurturing? The law of growth is consistent and cannot be hurried. It honors patience, not impatience. What you water, you nurture. What you nurture, you harvest. Repetition is not a parlor trick to make things happen overnight. It is a discipline of faith and a demonstration of your trust in the unseen. When you persist in a new inner statement despite the old outer evidence, you are training your mind to become the new man or woman you desire to be. You are telling your subconscious that the new story, not the old, is the one to believe. And when the subconscious at last accepts it, the outer world must bow to the new pattern as naturally as a tree grows toward light. The mind believes through saturation, through a slow but steady coloring of consciousness. Imagine a clear vessel of water, and then imagine dye poured into it. At first it swirls faintly, a hint of color drifting aimlessly, but with continual pouring the entire water becomes colored until no trace of the old clarity remains. So it is with your inner speech. The old identity may still swirl in the background, but with each repetition of the new idea, the whole of consciousness is dyed in its color. When the subconscious is fully saturated, the outer world must conform as surely as a reflection conforms to the object it reflects. This is not coercion of the outer world, but transformation of the inner, and the outer is compelled to mirror it. Saturation is the alchemy of repetition. It transmutes thought into experience, assumption into embodiment, invisible desire into visible fact. I have met men who repeated to themselves that they were doomed, and so they were. I have met women who repeated to themselves that they were blessed, and so they were. The principle is the same whether for heaven or for hell. Do not imagine for a moment that the law of repetition discriminates or moralizes. It does not reward the good and punish the bad. It simply responds to whatever you impress upon it, just as electricity will illuminate a cathedral or electrocute a man depending upon how it is applied. The subconscious mind is neutral, mechanical, impersonal. It will give you exactly what you rehearse within it. Therefore, choose carefully the words and images you echo inside, for they do not remain abstractions. They descend into the deep of self and rise again clothed in form. Repeatedly tell yourself that you are small, and life will shrink to fit you. Repeatedly affirm that you are favored, and life will open corridors where before there were walls. This is not superstition. It is simply law in action. Some of you may feel resistance when you first begin repeating a new state of being. That is perfectly natural and no cause for alarm. The old mental pattern is like a well-worn path through a forest. It protests because it is being displaced by a new trail. When you step off the old path, the underbrush may scratch, and the ground may feel uncertain. But do not be discouraged by that inattention or the voice that whispers, "This is foolish." Continue your repetition gently, persistently, as one would train a child or tame a wild horse. You do not beat the mind into submission, you patiently lead it. In time, as with any habit, the new pattern becomes the path of least resistance, and the mind begins to believe automatically what it once doubted. The feeling of awkwardness fades, and the new state becomes as natural as breathing. This is how you cross the bridge from wishing to knowing, from rehearsal to reality. Remember always that repetition is not merely about words. It is about imagining the end with feeling, about making the unseen as vivid as a remembered moment. When you say, "I am wealthy," do not merely mouth the phrase like a parrot. Feel the weight of the wallet, the freedom of choice, the quiet confidence of provision, the joy of giving without fear of lack. When you say, "I am loved," do not simply utter the syllables. Feel the warmth of a genuine embrace, the sound of laughter shared, the security of being cherished. The subconscious responds to vivid impressions as a photographic plate responds to light. Words without feeling are like letters without postage. They go nowhere, or they return undelivered. But words fuse with imagination, and feeling travels straight to the deep self and take root. This is why children's pretend games feel so real. They pour themselves into them. You must become as a child again in your repetition, playful, vivid, believing. There is a mystical truth hidden in repetition that few understand. Each time you repeat an idea with conviction, you are not merely uttering a sentence. You are re-entering that state of consciousness. You are practicing living in the end, stepping into the invisible scene as though it were already so. And consciousness, my friends, is the only reality. Everything else is its shadow. The more often you dwell in a state, the more natural it becomes, until it hardens into fact, as surely as water solidifies into ice. You are not hypnotizing yourself into a lie, as the skeptic may claim. You are awakening yourself to a deeper truth, which the outer world has not yet caught up to. Each repetition is a rehearsal of being. Just as a musician practices a piece until it flows effortlessly from his fingers, you practice the state of your wish fulfilled until it flows effortlessly from your consciousness into your circumstances. This is the artistry of assumption. I say to you with love and urgency, stop rehearsing the things you do not want. Many rehearse their failures as though they were sacred text. They repeat stories of lack, rejection, and injustice until these things become their identity and the very atmosphere of their life. Break the cycle by giving your attention to a new story. Repeat it morning and night, as you wake and as you sleep, for these are the gateways to the subconscious. Let it become the background music of your days, humming beneath your activities. Your mind cannot hold two opposing states indefinitely. One will fade as the other grows. The one you feed will prevail, just as surely as a plant thrives when watered and withers when neglected. Cease feeding the weeds of self-pity and begin feeding the roses of self-concept. In time, the old story will crumble and the new one will bloom, not because the world has changed first, but because you have. Some fear they are deceiving themselves by repeating what is not yet visible. But my friends, the visible world is only the shadow cast by the invisible reality. You are not deceiving yourself. You are impressing the seed upon the soil of consciousness. The oak tree was once invisible within the acorn, yet it was real, complete in essence, waiting only for expression. Your repeated assumption is that invisible acorn. In time, the tree must appear, but only if the seed is planted and tended. To repeat a new state is to acknowledge its reality in seed form. The farmer does not dig up his seed every morning to see if it has sprouted. He trusts the process. Likewise, trust your repetition. You are aligning with the unseen pattern of your desire. And when the subconscious accepts it, the world will rearrange as surely as dawn follows night. This is not wishful thinking, it is spiritual agriculture. When you understand, deeply and not just intellectually, that your mind believes whatever you repeat for it, you cease blaming circumstances and begin claiming authority over your inner kingdom. You realize you are the operant power. The mind is your servant, not your master. You may have allowed it to run wild for years, repeating old fears and old wounds like a broken record, But from this day forward, you can begin a new inner conversation. And that conversation, sustained, will outpicture as a new life with astonishing faithfulness. It is like discovering that you have been steering the ship all along, though you thought you were merely a passenger tossed by the waves. When you change the direction of the wheel, the inner dialogue, the ship inevitably changes its course. This realization is both humbling and liberating. It places the power squarely in your hands. You cannot change the wind, but you can set the sail. And repetition, my friends, is the hand upon the sail. This is why prayer, as I teach it, is not a ritual of pleading or begging, but an act of assuming. It is the inner repetition of a fulfilled state until it feels so natural that you cannot help but live from it. When you pray in this way, you are not trying to convince some distant deity to grant you a favor. You are impressing upon your own consciousness the reality of the wish fulfilled. The subconscious, which is the creative aspect of your being, responds automatically when a state becomes dominant. When the feeling of the wish fulfilled saturates your inner world, your prayer is answered, not by an external intervention, but by the immutable law of consciousness itself. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight. You become what you repeat. Prayer, then, is not a momentary act, but a continuous state of awareness, a dwelling in the invisible, until it appears in the visible. You do not try to make it happen. You simply live from it, and it happens of its own accord. Do not underestimate the power of small repetitions. A single drop of water will not carve a stone, but a steady drip will wear a canyon through granite. Likewise, a single affirmation may seem weak, laughable even, but repeated with faith and persistence, it reshapes the inner landscape of your mind. At first you may feel as though nothing is happening, but each repetition is like another drop wearing away at the old belief. In time, the groove deepens, and a new channel is formed through which life begins to flow. You will wake one morning to find you no longer struggle to believe, you simply are. A new belief has taken root and become your automatic self-concept. This is why the ancients spoke of meditation, mantras, and continual remembrance. They understood the cumulative power of repetition. What seems insignificant today becomes monumental tomorrow when sustained without wavering. I encourage you to take this seriously as one who has seen the law work in countless lives. Write down the statements you wish to impress upon your mind. Do not rush through them as a chore. Repeat them softly, lovingly, as though you are speaking to a beloved child, for indeed you are shaping the child of your future self. Speak them as you drift to sleep, when the subconscious is most receptive and the conscious mind relaxes its guard. See yourself already possessing the state. Do not merely think it, feel it real. The sights, the sounds, the sensations. Persist until it hardens into fact. This is the true work, not a public display, but a private practice. The sculptor does not pound the marble once and walk away. He chips and shapes until the hidden form emerges. So too you must shape the inner self until the hidden life emerges. And as you practice this, watch how life rearranges itself with almost uncanny precision. People, events, opportunities, even chance encounters will begin to show up as though summoned by an unseen hand. But do not be surprised. This is not magic in the sense of violating natural law. It is magic only to those who do not know the law. You have changed your inner pattern, therefore the outer world must conform. As within, so without. Repetition is the golden key that opens this door. What you continually assume within, you will inevitably experience without. The world is not your enemy, it is your mirror. Change the inner image reflected in the mirror, and the reflection must change. This is why results often appear to come out of nowhere. They are the inevitable outpicturing of a state long rehearsed in the invisible. So tonight, as you leave this room or close this book, remember with utmost seriousness and tenderness, your mind is believing whatever you are repeating right now. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Choose wisely, choose lovingly, choose powerfully. For repetition is creation itself. As you sow in thought, so shall you reap in life. Let your inner speech become a hymn of your highest vision, not a dirge of your past wounds, and the world will sing it back to you in form. This is not mere optimism, but the promise of life, and it never fails. The law is no respecter of persons, but it is an unfailing respecter of states. Enter the state you desire by repetition, and persist until it becomes your dwelling place. Then watch with quiet awe as your world rearranges itself to match your inner song. This is the power, the responsibility, and the gift placed in your hands.